My American daughter lived 1 week at Jamaican public school. Day 3 got her. My daughter has never sat in a classroom with 45 other kids in it. No air conditioning. No specialist teacher for the subject she was struggling in. Day 1, she thought it was an adventure, new uniform, new country, new school. By day 3, she was crying in the school bathroom. And when I finally got her to tell me why, it wasn't for the reason I expected. It wasn't the heat. It wasn't the crowding. It was something a lot harder to explain, and by the end of this video, I think you'll understand exactly what she felt. If you've ever sat across from your kid complaining about their school, the class sizes, the homework, the unfair teacher, hold on to that thought. Because we're about to test it against a system that's been asked to do more with less for almost 50 years straight, and somehow, it's still producing kids who can outwork ours. This is Trailora, where Jamaica meets the world. Every week we go past the headlines into what's actually happening on the ground here, and today, we're going somewhere I haven't taken you before, inside a Jamaican public school classroom, in real time, through the eyes of a kid who's never known anything but American schooling. Here's what you're going to see over the next 20 minutes. First, what an average day actually looks like inside an overcrowded Jamaican high school right now, in 2025 and 2026, not the version from 20 years ago. Second, the story of a teacher who had a job offer waiting for her in Florida, and chose to stay anyway, and what that decision actually costs her every single month. Third, the exact moment on day 3 that broke my daughter, and why it had nothing to do with what you'd guess. And fourth, what changed in her by the end of the week, because it says something about resilience most American kids never get the chance to build. If you've watched our video comparing the Jamaican and American school systems, or the one where we walked through the UNICEF learning gap data with a diaspora parent, you already know we've circled this topic before. This time, we're not circling it. We're sitting in the seat. Day 1. Monday morning. 6:40 a.m. Zaria sweating through her uniform before we've even left the house, because the walk to school here isn't a 5-minute car ride, it's 15, 20 minutes on foot, sun already working. She thought that part was funny. This is like camp, she told me. Then we walked into the classroom. 40+ desks packed into a room built for maybe 30. No air conditioning, just windows, open, doing their best against the heat. Kids sharing textbooks 2 and 3 to a desk because there weren't enough copies to go around for the whole class. And here's the thing that's easy to miss if you've never seen it, this isn't one bad school. As of the last full enrollment count, 65 of Jamaica's 173 public high schools were sitting above their designed capacity. But here's the twist almost nobody talks about, and it's the kind of detail that changes how you see the whole system. At the exact same time those 65 high schools are bursting at the seams, 604 of the island's 732 primary schools are sitting under capacity. Empty desks in rural parishes. Packed desks in the towns everyone's trying to get their kids into. It's not that Jamaica doesn't have enough schools. It's that the demand and the buildings aren't in the same place, and nobody's fixed the map yet. Zaria's reaction on day 1. Excitement. New friends, new food, new rhythm. That's day 1. Day 2 is where the cracks started to show. Day 2. Tuesday, we found out the school runs a shift system. One group of students starts at 7 in the morning and is out by noon. A second group comes in at noon and goes until 5. Same building. Same desks. 2 entirely separate school days squeezed into one set of walls. This isn't new, and it isn't neglect, it's a system that's been trying to guarantee every Jamaican child a seat since the shift structure was introduced back in the 1970s, when the country simply didn't have enough school buildings for the number of kids who needed one. And some of the schools carrying this load today are enrolling almost double what they were built for. Port Antonio High registered over 1,600 students for 800 spaces. Petersfield High, close to 1,600 for the same 800. St. James High, close to 1,800. To be fair, this is a country actively working to fix it. Belfield High just opened a new 8-classroom block last September, chasing the day it can finally come off shift for good. Old Harbor High is in the same fight. But for Zaria, sitting in a 5-hour compressed school day with no breathing room between subjects, it meant something simple: less time to absorb anything, and zero margin if you fell behind for even one day. That was Tuesday. But before I take you into Wednesday, the day that actually broke her, I need to introduce you to someone else. Because what happened to Zaria doesn't make sense without understanding what's happening to the adults in that building. Zaria's homeroom teacher had a job offer. Florida. A private school, better pay, and, this is the part that matters, she'd have had roughly 3 times her Jamaican salary in real, purchasing power terms if she'd taken a position in the United States. That's not an exaggeration for effect. Recent research comparing teacher pay across the Caribbean and its top migration destinations found mid- and late-career Jamaican teachers could earn well over double their current salary in Canada, and well over triple in the US, once you adjust for what that money actually buys. She turned it down. And she's the exception, not the rule. Jamaica's population grew by a net 600 people in the entirety of 2025. 600. In a country of nearly 2.8 million. That number isn't low because people stopped having children, it's low because outward migration to the US, Canada, and the UK is almost completely cancelling out births. Teachers are a huge part of that outflow, because for decades, the US, the UK, and Canada haven't just accepted Jamaican teachers, they've actively recruited them. I asked her, on camera, why she stayed. She didn't give me a hallmark answer. She said something closer to, if everyone who's good at this leaves, who's left in the room? I'm not going to pretend that's not a sentence that hit me harder than I expected it to. She stayed. But hundreds of her colleagues haven't. And that gap, the one she's personally standing in the middle of, is exactly what Zaria walked straight into on Wednesday. Day 3. Wednesday. Math class. 40+ students, 1 teacher, a teacher who, we found out later, was also covering a second subject that week because the school didn't have anyone else to put in that room. That's not an isolated story. Jamaica has been advertising roughly 300 vacant teaching posts a year heading into recent school years, with math, literacy, music and geography consistently the hardest subjects to staff. And nationally, on the last published exam results, only 43% of students passed math on the region's standardized secondary exam. So picture the room. The substitute is doing her best, but she's out of her depth on this particular topic. And then a Jamaican classmate, a girl Zaria had known for 2 days, raises her hand, walks the teacher through the concept herself, calm, clear, like she'd taught it before. Because in a lot of these classrooms, the kids who are keeping up end up teaching the kids who aren't. It's survival, and it's also something close to leadership, built by necessity. Zaria went quiet after that. Quiet the rest of the walk home, too, which, if you know a 12-year-old, is its own kind of alarm bell. She wasn't talking, she was processing, turning something over that didn't have an easy shape yet. Later, in the bathroom, when she finally told me what was wrong, it wasn't, "This is too hard," or, "I want to go home." It was this, "Dad, that girl is basically teaching herself. And I complain when my teacher assigns extra homework." That was the moment this stopped being a trip about my daughter adjusting to a new school. It became a trip about what she was watching a system, and a generation, absorb every single day, and still show up smiling the next morning. Days 4 and 5. By Thursday, something had shifted. Zaria started noticing the things that were actually working. The school's feeding program was one of them, one hot, guaranteed meal in the middle of a chaotic day, and for a lot of these kids, the most stable meal they'll get all day. This isn't a small, informal thing either. In the 2025/2026 budget, the Ministry of Education committed more than $1 billion Jamaican dollars just to provide breakfast for roughly 69,000 students under a national learning and intervention plan. And back in May of 2025, the Cabinet approved a brand new national school nutrition policy, one designed, over time, to reach more than 500,000 students across primary, secondary and special education. Schools island-wide. That's not charity. That's a country treating a meal as infrastructure, because it knows hungry kids don't learn, no matter how good the teacher in front of them is. And the teachers, most of them underpaid and stretched across too many students, like the one who turned down Florida, still greeted every single kid by name. Here's a number that puts the whole week in perspective. Jamaica's national literacy rate sits at 96%. 96. In a system that outside researchers estimate is only delivering around 70% of the educational outcomes you'd expect for a country at Jamaica's income level. Read that again, the system is underperforming its own resourcing on paper, and the kids are still coming out ahead of what the math would predict. That's not an accident. That's stamina, discipline, and a work ethic being built under pressure most American classrooms will never apply. There's a hopeful trend underneath all this, too. The ministry reported a real decline in teacher resignations heading into the current school year, a sign the system is starting to stabilize instead of hemorrhage staff the way it has in recent years. It's slow. It's not fixed. But it's moving in the right direction. By Friday, Zaria wasn't asking when we were going home. She asked me why her school back in the States complains about class sizes of 22. I want to be clear about something, this was never a, "look how hard it is in Jamaica," video. That's not the point, and honestly, it's a little insulting to a country producing this kind of resilience with a fraction of the resources. This was a mirror. What do we actually call hard, when we've never had to build the kind of stamina these kids build before they're even teenagers? Think about the two people at the center of this story who I never planned on making the center of anything. A homeroom teacher who could have tripled her salary and left, and stayed anyway, because she couldn't stand the thought of who'd be left in the room if she didn't. And a 12-year-old classmate who taught her own math lesson because the adult in the room had been stretched across 2 subjects that week. Neither of them asked to be resilient. The system just required it of them, over and over, until it stopped looking like a hardship and started looking like who they are. If you watched our video on the learning gap between Jamaican and American diaspora kids, we said back then that the gap was closing. This week showed me exactly what that closing looks like from inside the room, not a statistic on a slide, a homeroom teacher choosing to stay and a 12-year-old teaching her own math class because nobody else was going to. So here's what I actually want to know from you. If your child had to trade schools with a Jamaican student for 1 week, full shift system, no AC, 40+ kids in the room, who do you honestly think would adjust faster? Yours, or theirs? Drop your real answer in the comments, because I already know mine, and after this week, I don't think I'm wrong. If this is your first time here, we've got the full Jamaica versus America comparison and the learning gap breakdown waiting for you right after this one. This is Trailora, where Jamaica meets the world. I'll see you in the next one.